my channel. So today we're going to be talking about Sherri Papini again. In today's case, we're going to be talking about the arrest affidavit and how we came to this. We're going to talk about what proof the police have to actually arrest Sherri Papini. And I did mention in my last video some of the things, so we're just going to take a more deep dive into it. If you didn't see my last video, make sure you watch that because this video will not make any sense. And plus, you can also get the backstory to what happened and why we're talking about the arrest affidavit now. So if you could go back and watch that video, that'd be great. Or if you saw it already, thanks for coming back to watch this video. I'm going to tell you everything they have on her, which was enough probable cause for an arrest. So just to backtrack and go over everything really quick, Sherri Papini claimed that she was kidnapped in November 2016 by two Hispanic women when she was on a jog in her neighborhood. She said that she was kept captive for 3 weeks, and during those 3 weeks she was tortured and abused, and then she was finally just let go on the side of a highway. She could not identify her attackers, and she really couldn't recount everything that happened to her during that time. The police had worked very hard to find her attackers. However, they were unsuccessful because of the information that was given to them. Police are saying that this was all a hoax and it was all a lie, and that during the time Sherri claimed that she was kidnapped, she was actually staying with her former ex-boyfriend at his house.
Now, you say you were suspicious of this case early on. What was it that first made you think something's not right?
So there's really 3 stages to this investigation, and the first was when she went missing. The first launch was all the resources to try to find her, locate her as a missing person. Second phase we went into was as suspects were developed and we got the sketches, was trying to identify who was responsible. And then it was in the third phase that really the suspicion began. Sherri Papini reappears. We have all the evidence involved with her to process. We have statements, we have interviews, we have a lot of facts to vet out. And as we started doing that portion of the investigation, that's when a lot of suspicion came to light.
So in 2016, the police had collected some evidence to see if this was actually a crime, and they had gotten the results back in 2020. The investigators were contacted, letting them know that the potential DNA that was found on Sherri was a match to Sherri's ex-boyfriend's family member. With this evidence, this had led them to Sherri's ex-boyfriend. They wanted to know who is this man, what's going on, why is his family's DNA on Sherri. After talking to Sherri's ex-boyfriend, the police found out that Sherri and the ex-boyfriend were communicating through prepaid phones, and they had planned for him to come and get her and for her to stay with him. After hearing this, the police wanted to dig a little further to see what was actually going on and to see if the ex-boyfriend was telling the truth. Okay, so let's dive into this arrest affidavit. So Sherri was arrested for making false statements to a federal law enforcement officer and engaging in mail fraud. A special agent with the FBI named Courtney E. Lanto, who was in charge of investigating kidnappings, fraud, and false statements, gave details in this affidavit. So that's what we're about to go through and get all the details on what happened. This officer said that Sherri lied about being kidnapped and she was actually staying with her former ex-boyfriend. The police did believe Sherri at the time of this abduction, and they put on a nationwide search for her. They had Sherri detail the women so they can make a sketch to find the attackers. They were communicating with Sherri through text message, and she was telling them about the instruments the women would use to inflict injuries on her. But come to find out, this was all a lie. So reading more into the affidavit goes on to describe the nationwide search for Sherri in detail. After Sherri's husband, Keith, called the police department to report her missing, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, they saw Sherri's cell phone and her earbuds with her hair entangled in it at the corner of Sunrise Drive and Old Oregon Trail, about 2 feet off the road. The police also did a walkthrough of Sherri's home, and they said that they didn't see anything out the ordinary. Sherri's purse was still there, her jewelry was still there, and she had no suspicious bank activity on her bank accounts. They did an interview with Keith, and he said that they did not have any marital issues. The police department also did an extensive search all over the county and throughout several states. Hundreds of tips were submitted and numerous items of evidence was collected, but this did not end up to the whereabouts of Sherri. So the police ended up doing an analysis of Sherri's phone. The police found that there were 2 men phone numbers that were saved under female names. The police traveled out of state to interview these men, and one of these men stated that him and Sherri met in 2011 when she was out of work for town. The two had spent the weekend together and continued to exchange flirtatious text messages throughout the years, but they had not seen each other recently. The investigators also interviewed another man, and he said that he had met Sherri in 2001 at a Friday Night Live youth program, and they had dated for several years. He described her as an attention-hungry person who told stories to get people's attention. He told them how she would fabricate stories of being a victim of abuse from her family, her father, and even by him after they broke up. They even interviewed Sherri's ex-husband, and he was in the military, and he said that him and Sherri had gotten married because Sherri had a heart murmur and she needed medical insurance. He said they never lived together and they never traveled together. He said this because Sherri's mom had mentioned how Sherri would tell her mother that they were traveling all over the world together, and he was like, no, that didn't happen. We didn't travel together at all. She just came and visited me one time in Japan, and that was it. He said when he returned from deployment, Sherri had told him that she wanted a divorce, and he was like, okay, fine. And she said she had met someone else, so she just wanted to get the divorce. The ex-husband also mentioned how Sherri would tell him how she was abused when she was growing up, but he later found out that this was a lie and that she had a history of telling these fabricated stories. The investigators contacted a person who worked at the Friday Night Live youth program, and this person stated that Sherri was the only student they feared having in the program because she was really good at creating different realities for people, so they would see what she wanted them to see and she would have all the attention on her. They had also interviewed Sherri's friends, and they described Sherri as being crazy and wild when she was younger. They said that she used to run away and stay with friends a lot, and multiple friends stated that she would make up lies about being the victim of abuse. Okay, so let's jump to the part of the affidavit where they recount the day Sherri was found. So on November 24, 2016 at 4:30 a.m., several calls were made to 911 regarding a woman standing or running in the middle of Interstate I-5. The truck driver had stopped and called 911. Sherri was later found with this truck driver on the highway. She was in Woodland, California, which was approximately 146 miles away from her disappearance. She was found with a chain around her waist that one arm was bound to, and with additional bindings around her other wrist and ankle. She had went to the hospital, and the police learned that she had lost a considerable amount of weight. She had all of her blonde hair cut off. She was branded on her right shoulder. Her nose was swollen. She had bruises on her face, rashes on her left arm and left upper inner thigh, as well as other parts of her body. There were ligature marks on her wrists and ankles, burns on her left forearm, and bruising on her pelvis and the fronts of her both legs. There were no traces of narcotics in her system, and she was not sexually assaulted. While she was at the hospital, the investigators took her sweatshirt, her sweatpants, her socks, and her underwear. There was DNA found on her underwear and sweatpants, which were a match to an ex-boyfriend. This DNA was potential sperm. Investigators said that they tried to interview Sherri on the way to the hospital, but she refused to speak to them. They then gave an audio recorder to Keith and asked him to interview Sherri. Sherri said that her abductors had alluded to law enforcement being involved in her kidnapping. That's why she didn't want to speak to the police. She also said that the kidnappers had read articles to her that stated that she had left voluntarily opposed to being kidnapped. Sherri said that they were laughing at her. Her kidnappers said, quote, "No one believes you. Everyone thinks you ran away. No one believes you. Guess what? The buyer's a cop. They're never gonna find you." End quote. Sherri expressed concern about the police writing down everything she was saying, and she thought that they were in on it, so she was very upset. Sherri recounted the day of her kidnapping, and this is what she said happened. She said on the day of her kidnapping, she was wearing jogging clothes. Since her husband was not going to come home for lunch, she decided to go for a jog to train for her 5K run. She said that she just had a breast augmentation procedure done and she was beginning to heal up and she wanted to start jogging again. She said that while she was jogging, the two women drove by her in a dark-colored SUV, then backed up, then saw her jogging up the road. One of the women had on sunglasses and she believed she said, quote, "Can you help me?" unquote. Sherri had explained that she had her phone in her right hand and her earbuds on, so she took her left hand to take it out to hear what the woman was saying. When Sherri approached the vehicle, the woman opened the door and Sherri had saw that she had a small revolver in her hand. Sherri immediately ducked down, set her phone and earbuds on the ground, and pulled out some of her hair to leave with her phone and earbuds. Sherri had believed the woman said something like, "We don't want to hurt you," or "We don't want to kill you." Sherri then got into the SUV. Sherri described the SUV as having tinted windows, either no seats or one seat on the far side and a hump that went up. She said she was in the back of the truck on the floor, and from the way that she was positioned, her hips were starting to hurt. The investigator asked Sherri how long she believed she was in the truck before her hips started hurting. Sherri said maybe about 40 minutes. She knew this based on the last TV show she watched, which was Blacklist. And if you know what Blacklist is, then that's suspicious enough. Sherri could not describe the direction she went in. She didn't know if they made any stops, and she could not determine the length of the trip. Sherri told police that only one of the two Hispanic women had brought her back. She said that from what she could remember, one was an older female. She was tall and fat, had straight dark or black hair with gray in it, and a raspy voice that was really mean. She said the younger female had curly long brown hair and spoke a lot of Spanish. She said that they both wore masks and had short black leather gloves on. Throughout the entire time, they only spoke Spanish, and she said that she would hear the older kidnapper hitting the younger kidnapper, but besides this, she couldn't remember anything else about her kidnappers. Now back to the day she was kidnapped, she said that she remembers waking up in a room and she had zip ties around her wrists and was no longer in the clothes she had been jogging in. The detective asked how many times she changed and she said she couldn't remember. She said that these were not the clothes that she was recovered in though. Sherri had said that her hands were zip tied behind her back and she couldn't break them. She said she chewed them off and cut her lip in the process, and she said that she thought that she was never left alone because when they weren't constantly checking on her, there was always music blasting and she could feel movement in the house. She said that if her kidnappers heard her moving, that they would come in and beat her. She said that the first time she tried to escape, she was branded. They had brought in a table, hit her back, and tied her to the table. Later on in the interview, she said that one time when she tried to escape, she couldn't get through the door because the door was deadbolted. So she had ripped off the boards on the windows, and while she did this, she had broken a nail during the process. She said that her kidnappers had hurt her and came into the room and had beat her. She recalled waking up with pain on her back, her side, her head, and her neck. When the detectives were hearing the story, they were a little confused. They were like, "Wait, hold up. I thought you said that you were branded the first time you tried to escape. Now you're telling us that they beat you. I'm a little confused here. What happened?" So Sherri said, No, that's not what I said. I said that the burn occurred during the later punishment, not the first one. It wasn't from her trying to escape through the window. It was from her making too much noise. You guys got the story wrong. That's not what happened. Even though that's what she said, but that's what she's saying. The police asked her what type of tool was used to brand her, and she said that she never saw the tool, but she knew that it was done over an extended period of time. Sherri said that the older kidnapper would hit her while the younger one would yell at her. She said that the woman put her in a closet with a bucket of kitty litter for her to use the bathroom in. She described the closet as containing shelves with a metal pole in it. She said that the woman had hooked a cable to it and to a chain, and the chain was around her waist, so she was connected to it the whole time. She said there was enough length for her to reach the bed, but she couldn't reach the door to get out. The chain was unmovable because it was bolted into the ceiling. Sherri described when she didn't listen to the woman, they would lock her in that closet. She described that the cable would make a lot of noise. She then said that she would try to exercise while she was there for all those days. And the detective asked her, well, how would you be able to exercise if the chain in the cable would make so much noise? And then Sherri said, oh, well, I would just tuck the cable in between my legs while I was working out, so it wouldn't make any noise. Sherri also said that while she was there, her kidnappers would play loud Mexican music, and she said that she knew there was a fireplace because she would hear the creaking sound. She said that while she was there, they fed her rice, tortillas, and sometimes some apples once a day. And if she would behave, she would get additional food. Even one time she was given cream of wheat. She said that all the food tasted absolutely terrible, nothing was good. She said she was only able to shower twice while she was there, but while she was showering, they were holding a gun to her head. She also mentioned during the interview that when she would shower, she would wash her underwear, but then she later said that she kept her clothes on while she was showering. So those are two conflicting stories right there. She said she doesn't remember why her hair was cut off. She said that she thinks she was trying to make the bed. She said, quote, I want to say I was smoothing out a blanket and the cable made a noise, unquote. She was unsure why her hair was actually cut off. During the interview, Sherri did recall that when she was having a therapy session, her therapist helped her remember that the woman had poured a sticky substance down her throat, and afterwards Sherri had taken her underwear and wiped her mouth off with it, so that's why there was a sticky substance on her underwear. Her husband had asked her about the car ride to where she was held, and Sherri said that she couldn't remember anything and she just kept falling asleep. The only thing she could remember is that the car smelled bad. When Sherri was recovered, she was wearing gray sweatpants, a gray sweatshirt, and her original underwear. She couldn't explain what happened to her original clothes. She just woke up with different clothes on. She said on the day she was released, she couldn't remember anything. The only thing she remembers is that the women were fighting and they just put her into a car. They had put a pillowcase over her head, drove her somewhere, and just told her to get out. And then that's when she started running around looking for help on the side of the road. So let's get into the part of the affidavit where the police found out that this whole thing was a lie, it was a hoax, it was not true. So when Sherri had went to the hospital on that night, DNA was collected from her clothing, and this turned out to be a match to the ex-boyfriend's. They got his DNA by collecting his trash when they were surveillancing him, and the police learned that it was a match to the DNA that was found on the underwear. The police started investigating their relationship, and they learned that Sherri and her ex-boyfriend were joint subscribers on an AOL account, and they had a historical financial transaction together. The police had interviewed Sherri's ex-boyfriend, and the ex-boyfriend told them that they were good friends and they were once engaged, but they haven't spoken in years. He said that he was going through an old box of pictures of them and sent them out to her family. Then out of the blue, she had reached out to him and she had asked him for help. Sherri had told her ex-boyfriend that her husband was beating her, and she had filed police reports, but the police never came to help her. She had sent out a care package to her ex-boyfriend, including a location to pick her up so she could run away. And he told him that Sherri told the ex-boyfriend to pick her up from Reading. The ex-boyfriend had a friend rent him a car, and he had went and picked her up. He had previously stopped at a store and got gas so he wouldn't have to stop on the way back. Also, while they were communicating during that time, they were communicating through prepaid phones. These records show that they were talking to each other as early as December 2015, which was almost a year before the hoax. When the phones were activated, one was pinging from Sherri's house and one was pinging from the ex-boyfriend's house. On the morning that the ex-boyfriend went to go pick up Papini while she was on a jog and she got kidnapped and all that other stuff, their phones were pinging together at the same location. The ex-boyfriend had said that during the ride down to where his residence was, Sherri was in the back seat the entire ride. So while the time Sherri was supposed to be kidnapped, she was actually staying with the ex-boyfriend. The ex-boyfriend's cousin told investigators that he had stopped by his cousin's house and he had saw Sherri there, and she was not restrained or tied up or anything. She was just in the house, and when she saw him, she did run to the back room. The ex-boyfriend said that while Sherri was staying there, she didn't leave the house at all. She had boarded up all his windows. The house that Sherri described as being kidnapped and held hostage in was the same exact layout of the ex-boyfriend's house. So when police heard this, they knew where she got the idea from. The ex-boyfriend said that when Sherri was at his residence, she would barely eat. For example, if she had a banana, she would only eat half of it, then throw it away. He also said that Sherri was the one to cut off her own hair. The ex-boyfriend said that he thought that they might end up back in a romantic relationship. That's why he went to go get her and to save her from her husband. He did not know what the final plan was. He did not know if she was going to go back to her family. She was going to stay with him, but he wanted her to remain with him. He said while they were together during this time, they did not have sex at all. Right before Thanksgiving, Sherri had told her ex-boyfriend that she wanted to go home because she missed her kids. The ex-boyfriend asked his friend to rent a car for him again, and he drove Sherri to Northern California. This was corroborated by the car rental records and the odometer reading on the rental car. The ex-boyfriend said he believed he was helping out a friend and he didn't think that he would get in much trouble. Once he started seeing the news coverage, he realized that this was a serious situation and something was wrong. The police were able to corroborate his story through his work records, his cell phone records, the rental car receipts, his furniture, and his financial record. So let's get to the good part where the police confront Sherri about all this evidence they have, and what is she going to say about it? How is she going to say that this is not a hoax and that she was actually kidnapped? So in August of 2020, Sherri was presented with this evidence and told that it was a crime to lie to law enforcement. But Sherri stuck by her story. She denied her ex-boyfriend's involvement and even continued to make false statements about her kidnappers. She denied ever being at the boyfriend's house. The investigator showed her photographs of all the things she described about the kidnapper's residence compared to her ex-boyfriend's residence, and she kept saying she didn't remember any of that, and that wasn't the furniture she remembered at all. Sherri told the detectives that she had not talked to her ex-boyfriend while she was married to her husband. While they were interviewing her, her husband Keith did leave the room, and while he was out the room, Sherri said that she had to confess to the investigators that she was talking to him behind her husband's back. She just didn't want to admit it while he was in the room, and she felt really bad about it, and she didn't want her husband to know. She also admitted to talking to other men while she was out of town for work behind her husband's back. So that's the evidence that the police had against Sherri, that they could prove that she committed these crimes, and that's why she was arrested. Also, the police said how the California Victims Compensation Board paid over $30,000 in fraudulent victim assistance money based on her hoax. Like I said in my previous video, this included her therapy, the ambulance ride, all that stuff she got reimbursed for. And let's remember that her GoFundMe and this money she used to pay off her credit card debts, and she was doing other stuff with the money. So all that money that they raised from GoFundMe was not used for this crime that happened. She was reimbursed and she kept all the money. So that's basically what this affidavit was talking about. The affidavit is 55 pages long, so if you guys want to go read it, I'll link it below and you can go check it out and read it for yourself. There are a few details that I left out because, like I said, it is 55 pages long and I couldn't fit it all into one video. I just took out some of the important parts that I thought you guys would be interested in. So if you guys do want to read it, like I said, it's going to be linked below, and I will have more videos coming. If you guys want any type of videos, just let me know. Thanks for watching, and guys, have a good day. Bye.